You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with JamesDCreviston and LukeLacoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Clean Comedy Podcast. I'm James. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. LukeLacoy.
Hey.
And today is going to be one of the most fun episodes we've ever done. This guy is one of my favorite people to hang out with. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my entire life. I got lucky. This is a true story, Luke. So I've been a kind of a creeper stalker fan of Joel's, and I've been like, I'm not kidding. This is a real thing. I've watched his videos and done stuff, and then someone came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to write a TV series, a pilot? We're going to write a pilot." And this comedian, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name's Joel Byars. He's going to be the lead in that. And I was like, "Are you serious?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's serious." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." And I took a pay cut on that script just so I could get in the show with Joel. Like that's the truth. So I didn't charge the normal rate that I did because really I wanted to meet Joel Byars because I'm like a secret stalker fan of his. So with that lead-in, please welcome the very talented, the very funny, the man of the hot Breathiverse, Mr. Joel Byars.
Hey.
Yeah, what's goody, James? Hey, my guy. So James, thanks for that intro, man. And I've been a fan of your show, so it was actually cool when we did that virtual table read that like you popped up. I was like, "Oh, it's the ComedyPreneur." That's a cool thing there.
That's so funny because I'm not kidding, dude. I have literally been stalking you for like 2 years, like watching all your stuff on YouTube and you interviewing other comedians. And I was like, I want to do something with him. How do I do this? Like, what do I do? And when that came up, when Homeschooled came up, I was like, as soon as they dropped your name, I was like, oh, I'm 100% into this. I want to do this so bad. And you killed it. I have never seen anyone kill a table read like that in my life.
Virtually. It's an experience that's virtual for sure.
That's the crazy part, right? Who knew that you could do something virtually like that? Because you did all your parts of the pilot virtually, correct?
Yeah. Like the table read and all of that and the rehearsals were virtual. And then we actually got on set and did it. And even my part on set was just talking into a camera that was a computer. So, I mean, it was an interesting experience, but I love learning from every single thing we do. So anytime I'm on set or at a table read, I'm always like, okay, who's who? What are they doing? How are they doing things? And on set, I'm always asking questions. Like,
yeah.
The director, okay, how was that? Anything I can do better? Or I'm listening to I was talking to the lighting guy afterwards, and he actually helped me set up my lighting situation in my office. We FaceTimed at my office, and he showed me where to put my lights to set it up for the best light effect. So I'm always learning. So it was cool to be a part of that experience with you.
That's so cool. Well, for anyone who doesn't know you, and I don't know why they wouldn't know you, can you tell them a little bit about your background and about the hot Breathiverse and about everything you do? Because I'm not kidding, dude. Like, you are the man among comedians.
Oh, whoa. Well, I'm sure Luke is sitting here like, who is Joel? What?
No, I've did my fair amount of stalking before this. So, so many people have restraining orders out on James. This is just every time we have a guest, it's like I've been following you for the last 10 years.
It's one of those things where I'm a huge comedy fan, so I'm going to really watch and learn from people, and I really have learned and watched a ton from you. So that.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think we share just that interest of helping comics and learning about comedy as much as possible. So I think there's just that mutual just motivation in comedy that I think is becoming more and more prominent, and you're a part of that. Just putting goodwill and positivity into comedy is really what Hot Breath has become. You know, I started comedy 11 years ago. I've since released my own comedy special and gone on tours and things like that. But since quarantine, 2020 was my year for 10-year anniversary. I released my comedy special. I'm the most booked I've ever been, actually as a touring headliner. And then March hits, all of a sudden everything disappears, and it's one of those experiences where you can't control what happens, but you can control how you react to it. So I just focused, okay, I don't have live shows. What do I have? I have this podcast I've been doing for 5 years that has over 300 interviews with comedians. okay, let me focus on that. So now it's grown into just this international comedy community where we do daily writing clubs and monthly contests and feedback mics and Q&As with comedians like Jeff Foxworthy. And it's really just become the comedy scene I wish existed. Like coming up in my own scene, I was alone and confused, and no one was offering a helping hand or booking me. So I want for this next generation of comedians, and I'm still learning. Like 11 years in, I understand I am still learning just as much as the new comics, but I want to give them a more positive and supportive environment to develop so they can just focus on getting funny and not me wasting 8-9 years of my career wondering why so-and-so didn't book me. Why am I not on that flyer? How did so-and-so get this or that? And just focus on what you can control. It took me 8 or 9 years to realize that. And I'm just hoping this next generation of comedians in the Hot Breathiverse understand, oh, we're in a supportive environment where we can just get good at comedy and become just good at what we love doing and not worrying about all the old ways of comedy. I think all that is in the past.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the thing is, that's the problem with some comedy places is there's not support. It seems to be a competition, right? It seems to be that guy's not as funny as me. That person doesn't have as good of jokes as I do. I can do a set better than that. And that's the problem with comedy. And I see it all the time. I see it because like you and I post stuff on Reddit, like the same kind of stuff, like to help people, and it's like 50 downvotes, and I'm like, for what reason? Like, for what reason are you downvoting me? I've done nothing wrong. I'm trying to help. It's like, well, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, well, did you watch it? No, but you're stupid. You're like, okay, all right, well, then, whatever, dude. Like, do your thing. But that's what it is. There's this feeling among comedians that if you get stage time, then I'm losing stage time. But that's not true. There's enough stage time for everybody. And guess what? If you're not getting enough stage time, start your own thing, man. Like, that's the big thing. And that's what you've done is not only have you built a community, but you've also given these comedians a place for stage time and a place to work out their jokes that's not judgmental, that's not harsh, that's not mean. And you're literally, I wish I try to be supportive, but I feel like you're the most supportive comedian I've ever met in my life.
I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's just learning from doing so many interviews in the podcast of like the most famous comedians I've interviewed have coincidentally been the nicest. Who would have thunk that would be the case? But the most successful, Jeff Foxworthy, apologized because it took me a while to like get him booked for. I mean, I would wait my entire career for this interview, and he like apologized before and after. And I'm just like, dude, what? Like, it's like those kind of like moments of humility you see in comics like that of just like, oh yeah, they just care about helping comedians. And that's all I care about. I care about getting good as a comedian and helping others do the same. And it's really become super rewarding, especially with like live comedy. Who knows when it's coming back? So we're just kind of making the best of a situation here. And I'm hoping that it's changing the culture of comedy. That's really the long-term vision of Hot Breath, is to really shift the paradigm within comedy and make positivity and community and support the new norm within comedy and none of that negativity and competition. And at least in our Hot Breathiverse, it is the case in the norm, and it's seeping out. And when people request to join like our Facebook group or reach out to me on social media, their feedback is that it's so positive. And a lot of female comics say like, oh, it's a safe space. We feel safe here. And that's what's most important. Just give comics a safe and supportive place to learn comedy, which is so hard to do and requires so much resilience. If you just don't have to worry about that aspect of the journey, the negativity and the competition, that'll help you focus on actually just getting good at the craft, which is going to take up all of your time and mind energy as it is.
Yeah. Luke, did you have a question? Okay, you're about to say something.
I have so many questions. Number one, I really enjoyed that the shorts that you were doing of like documenting your open mic experience. That was really neat. And just seeing like, like what goes on at a coffee shop and like people on their phones, people twerking outside, just like all this like weird stuff, like chip bags opening in the background. And so that was really neat. That's really cool to see. And I think that's going to give a lot of insight to comics or or beginners even, like what's it like and what actually goes into it, and kind of like the non-pretty side of, performing.
The reality of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of, I like the guy that, like, how my comedy special, I self-produced it, and it was going to be an album, and then a fan of the podcast heard me talking about it and was like, oh, I have a video production company. We can just make this a special. So he actually followed me around for about 3-4 weeks leading up to the special, showing me working out this joke about me crying at my wedding. It was like trying this big story, and I was just going to do it in real time, him documenting it. And on my YouTube channel, there's a few episodes of that process. There's so much more footage. But like, I was editing it myself, and I was like, oh, editing's hard and takes a long time. But I have a whole hard drive full of like behind the scenes footage that the vision for the special at first was to have all this footage and make it like a documentary, which I still think we could do, but it's doing it at the end of the day. As creatives, we have all these different ideas, and it's just like, if you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing. So it's just doing something very effectively, get that plate spinning, and then moving on to another. So I appreciate you saying that, because that was like my goal with that behind the scenes stuff, to show just the reality of comedy. And even in my comedy special, showing the reality that this isn't a Netflix special where they film it 5 times and edit every syllable to be perfect. This is one take. This is in a small black box theater, actually the first theater that ever headlined me. And this is me and my wife and daughter on the front row. They make a cameo, but there's moments I forget my jokes at one time. At the beginning, we had to retake the intro because we didn't have a camera set up. So I leave all those moments in just because that's what comedy really is. Yeah. As Steve Martin said, comedy ain't pretty. And I really wanted to show that with this comedy special, that this is the raw reality of comedy. It's funny, but it's not perfect. And I think that's what I was hoping that's what people would relate to with it.
I just looked at how many times, on Google, like if you Google something and you could see like how many times you've been to a site. Like, so I've been to Joel Byars comedy. Like it's at like 58. This is your 58th time going to this site. So I really am a stalker. Now I feel weird. Joel's like, I'm never talking to you again after this, James.
No, I love it, and I appreciate you sharing that, because it is like, comedy is such like we think it's the world, but I mean, I'll tell my wife, oh, I interviewed Mark Norman today, and she'll be like, who? It's like
that was good.
We think it's a huge world, but it's really small and insulated. So when I do hear from comics like you, James, who like do find the Hot Breathiverse and the content and the interviews helpful and inspiring, that's the whole goal. And it's something I wish existed when I started 11 years ago. I didn't have these resources. I didn't have access to these people. So I created what I wish existed. And that's really become kind of the paradigm for everything I'm doing, is like, what do I wish existed as a comedian? Okay, let me work on creating that. And it's become a nice, like, kind of North Star for how I make decisions in my own career. So Luke may be typing in the chat right now, dude, you're creeping him out. I love hearing comics, and that the show is like, it really is helping them, because that's 100% the entire goal of it. So you're just echoing that. So I appreciate it.
What is your favorite part of the Hot Breathiverse, and how did that kind of get started for people who don't know? How did you start that? Because it's such a cool thing. And then like the thing that you do at the beginning of every show, every episode with the like how did you see? I told you I'm weird. How did you get started with that?
Yeah, I mean, the podcast started about 5.5 years ago. I'm an Atlanta comedian, and I've always repped Atlanta. I've always loved the Atlanta comedy scene and would put it up against any scene in the country. And about 5.5 years ago, there were 10 comics from Atlanta in the finals of Last Comic Standing. And I was like, oh, this would be a cool time capsule to interview all of these comics and just have it as like a time capsule of the scene. I really enjoyed interviewing them. Took a little bit of a break to see, okay, well, that was cool, but maybe what's season 2? I started to overthink what was my next move, and I took a little time off, and then just started interviewing comedians. And it became a roundabout way. I went through a phase where I thought it was Atlanta, so I was interviewing like other Atlanta creatives. And then I came full circle back to, no, this is a comedy podcast for comics by comics. I looked at what I wish existed in a comedy podcast. My favorite moments in like You Made It Weird or Joe Rogan were when they were nerding out about comedy. So I was like, let me just make that the show. That's my podcast. So I wanted to do well-researched interviews with well-respected comedians, sharing that behind-the-scenes insight of what it really means to be a comedian and to become a comedian. So it was a show I wish existed, and now, 5.5 years later, it's now a YouTube channel. It's now a Facebook group. We even just started in quarantine our own like comedian incubator membership community, but all on the mission of just helping cultivate the next generation of great comics through interviews and helpful resources and just short form content. And like I said, the daily writing club we do and the feedback mics, it's all just giving comics the tools to put in the work, because that's what I've learned in, taking classes myself and getting advice. It's like, at the end of the day, you got to do it. You can listen to every interview. You can take every class. You've got to put in the work. So my goal with Hot Breath is to like give comedians a place to apply what they've been learning and actually put in the work. Because otherwise, it's just going to go one in ear and out the other. And I can tell you from personal experience, that's the case. So Hot Breath has really become just a really motivated community of comedians that want to help each other get good.
Yeah, and I can hear like when you talk to the people that are your patrons or that are in the writing groups and the stuff, they are so grateful for that experience and for that it's not even guidance. It's more of like brotherhood. Like I know that you do teach them things and you do tell them stuff, but it's more like a brotherhood. And I think that's the big thing is like, I don't know if you've ever been out or if you've ever been out to the LA comedy scene and how it is. It doesn't sound like Atlanta is the same way, but it's very much not a brotherhood. And there's a lot of little cliques and groups. And if you're not in that, then you're not going to be invited to this show or that show or whatever. And I hated that. That was the one thing I hated about comedy is like, I didn't want comedy to be like a sport. I didn't want it to be like, if you're not a baseball player, you can't hang out with us. If you're not a football player, you can't hang out with us. If you're not this, you can't. I was like, dude, who cares? Like, let's all be funny. Like that should be the big thing is we all love comedy. We all love doing comedy. Let's get together and make comedy. And if we work together, we can make something. And not every comedian buys into that, unfortunately. And that's a kind of a weird thing.
I think that's every comedy scene. At least a lot of scenes. Hopefully that's the old way. Hopefully as like scenes start to come back. But I'm hoping people from the Hot Breathiverse, because it's comedians all around the world, I'm hoping they go into their scenes and start spreading this in their own scenes. Because like me in Atlanta, it was very cliquey. I wasn't booked on the hip shows. All I wanted to do was get good at comedy. The most popular advice in 300 interviews, the most popular advice has been, you've got to get on stage. That's really where you learn the craft, is by putting in the reps. So comedians early on told me that. And I was like, all right, I'll get up anywhere. So I'm performing not at the cool shows. I'm at the strip clubs at midnight. I'm on sidewalks. I'm on public buses. Like I was anywhere I could get stage time. That was my entire goal.
Whoa. You performed comedy on a public bus?
Dude, me and this other comic, he was doing a show at this college. And they had a public transit system that would take people to like the parking lots and whatnot. So it was like the parking lot was on the other side of Atlanta. I don't know what was going on. It was cool. But we were on board. He was doing the event there, and to promote it, he asked if I would come do comedy on the bus with him. So how comedy on the bus goes is we're all sitting on the bus like it's normal. And we look at each other, and we did about 5 rounds back and forth. And every time we had to like convince ourselves, all right, you go first this time. And it would just start with one of us standing up and being like, and this is college kids who don't care about anything, headphones in, on the phone. And we're like, all right, we're going to do some comedy. No, we're not students here, but prepare yourselves for amateur comedy. We're like 3 years in. We don't know what we're doing. All right, here we go. But the best heckle we got was from the bus driver. One of the bus drivers, as soon as he stood up, she goes, what are you doing? She like yells out, what are you doing? He's like, we were going to do some stand-up comedy. She's like, not on my bus. You can sit down and do it, but you're not standing up. So then he sits back down and starts doing his jokes. Sitting down on a bus. So just imagine on a public bus, you're just sitting next to your neighbor, like telling jokes, and he's like, "All right, coming up next, Joel Byars," and I'm just sitting there like, "Thanks, coming to the railing, Joel Byars, thank you." And then the light would be me dinging, pulling the string. All right, that's the light. We're getting out of here. Anywhere, I would perform anywhere. The junkie.
That's hilarious. In New Jersey, when we were in New Jersey, they had a thing where they were looking for people to do like play music or do stand-up comedy and stuff while people were waiting for the subway to go from like Jersey to New York. I was like, nobody's going to pay attention to that. Not in New Jersey, maybe New York. Maybe if you're like in the city of New York, like in Manhattan, maybe. But in Jersey, they're going to throw stuff at you. Like they're not going to. So that's brave, dude. I don't think I could ever do stand-up on a bus.
I think it's just naive. I think it's what it was. Just being young in the game and just being hungry for any reps anywhere. I mean, I would perform anywhere. Like, and that's, I think you need to, especially early on. Like comics are like, I don't know, is this show worth it? I mean, it's 4 people and it's the staff and then the rest are comedians texting. I was like, when you're starting out, you just got to get in front of a microphone. All you got to do is get comfortable being in a room that's not your mirror and not your Furbies that laugh at everything, and actually put in reps. That's what you need to be doing. I mean, there's countless nights. I was in a bar at, midnight performing for literally, I have a photo of me at this bar and all the high top tables all completely empty. And I'm just standing there doing, it's like on an Android. It's such a blurry photo, but like you could just see the struggle of comedy in real time. And I would do that all the time. And then I would get up at 6:30 to be at work the next day. Like that's part of the work. And that's why I care so much about the culture of comedy, because comedy's hard enough as it is. Comedy is hard enough as it is, where you have to write, you have to perform, you have to review your set, you have to refine your jokes. All that's so difficult. Getting stage time, finding shows, producing your own shows, all that is so difficult that if you could just not have to worry about being judged, the negativity coming from what are they going to say if I show up here or that, and just focus on being productive at working on the craft, every comic's going to be better for it, because the reality of comedy is that bar show at 1 a.m. You got to be up at work the next day and no one's laughing and you wonder why I even did this and should I go back to college? My parents were right. All of that goes through your head as you're bombing at 1 a.m. That's comedy, and that's why it's not for everyone, at the end of the day. But that's the reality of it, my friends. There's no way around the work. I can tell you that right now. Even in interviewing comedians 30 years in, they're like, I still have to put in the work. I still have to sit down and write. I still have to force myself to sit down and write. We assume that at some moment you ascend and graduate into this being easier, and the work it's not work. You're just naturally funny and you just go up there and it's magic. It's like, no, every level you have to put in the work. You have to sit down, you have to write, you have to review your sets. No one is immune to the work at any level. And that's why comedians don't retire, they die. I think Don Rickles said that, because you gotta be a little crazy to want to put in this amount of work. Seinfeld's almost a billionaire.
Yeah.
He still is thirsty for stage time. It's just something within you that it's either kind of there or not. And I think people can learn, even if you're not aspiring to be a professional, I think people can still learn from performing, writing material, just being in front of a room. I think it can just make you more confident and self-aware overall. But to actually go through that grind, that daily, nightly grind of comedy for years and years and years, it takes a special crazy bird to want to walk through that coop. So if Hot Breath can be a place to actually celebrate the wins and also not feel so alone in those struggles, then that's what I want it to be. Because even just thinking back on those shows, when you mentioned the bus, I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't really gone into detail on that. I just kind of said it in passing, and you're like, a bus? And I'm like, yeah, I've done a lot of crazy shows like that. Yeah.
But I mean, that you're right though. That's what comedy is, going and doing shows where there's like nobody or nobody wants to hear your stuff. You go to I did this bar one time. Where was it? It was like out by like Santa Clarita. It's like way outside LA. And we get there. It's like like people over 50, and everyone's drunk and no one wants to hear jokes. There was like a sports game on the other side of the bar, and like we're doing jokes and they're heckling us the entire time. Shut up. Football's better than you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the whole show, no one, it's like 10 comedians, and like every single time nobody could win them over. And I just remember leaving and thinking, that was a cool show. Like, I've never been heckled like that before. That was fun, you know?
Yep. It's part of it. It's part of the process. So I'm not saying that, like, you know, if you want more stage time, produce your own shows. If you want better quality stage time, produce your own shows. Producing your own show is a great way to not only learn the business side of comedy, it's a great way to network with other comics, and it's the best way to get better faster. You're learning how to be on your feet. You're learning how to even just interact with the audience. You're learning how to just be more natural and conversational on stage. So I always recommend comics to produce their own shows, but part of, you know, the grind is those open mics and all of that. And just, it's a lot. That's what I was getting at earlier, is like some comics are like, no, I won't go there. It's not worth it. It's only comics and no one cares. In the early days, you've got to do those shows. You got to do I'll tell you this day, the show that Luke was talking about, and I'm sorry if my audio just changed, but I just realized my mic wasn't plugged in. So I hope I'm sounding better now.
You do. You sound great.
Okay, sorry. I'm talking to a mic, but it was my computer picking it up for half of this. I'm sorry.
It's all
As
good.
a fellow podcaster, that hurts my heart that I did that to you. I'm so sorry.
We'll fix it in post.
Oh my God, I'm sorry to put that work on you, but I'm glad it's better now. But like that show Luke was talking about, that it's on my YouTube channel, that coffee shop, where the sun is out, you're performing in front of a window where homeless people are walking by. No one in the show cares. Like, I'll still do that show to just work out like reps, just to get it out of my mouth and just into a microphone and into a room of people. Like the feedback, whatever, it's just saying it out loud. It's not me reciting it. You need those vocal reps. So I'll still do that show just as like a warm up early on in the night before I go hit the other shows, just to kind of get my bearings for that evening. So I'll still do those kinds of shows.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I had a lot of people ask me, because I, like 9 months into comedy, I started producing my own shows, because I was like, I want to be able to control my stage time. And, you know, in a bigger market like New York or LA or probably even Atlanta, sometimes you only get 3 minutes, or you get 5 minutes or 7 minutes. You're not going to be able to build a big set with those kinds of shows. So I was like, well, I'll just produce my own show. I'll give myself 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and I'll bring on a bunch of comedians and give them more stage time, and we'll make a show out of it. And then because people were asking me how I did it, I ended up writing a book about how to produce comedy for fun and profit. And it was just basically like, here's a bunch of ideas. Here's how I set up my shows. Here's what I did. Hopefully it helps, you know? And that was the goal, is to just help people try to do something with comedy and make their own shows. Because you're right, when you do your own show, when you produce your own show, the sky's the limit at that point. And it's not even for money, right? Like, yes, I have for fun and profit in the title just because I think that's funny, but it's really about getting that stage time. And you're right, getting the reps. The open mic is the gym. You know, the stage is the gym. You have to work it out there, or you're not gonna do it. How long did it take you to get all the material for the Trophy Husband? Like, how long did that take you to build that entire set?
Yeah, I mean, that set is basically just an amalgamation of 10 years in stand-up, basically. That's just like my proudest work in my 10-year career. I had other material that was like more silly and whatnot. Like, this was just like the greatest hits of things I would want documented, you know, forever. So, I mean, that's basically 10 years of work. And what's crazy about the process of preparing for it was that I thought the set would be the easy part. I was like, oh, I have these jokes. I know they work. That'll be the easy part. So I almost waited till like the last minute to start organizing the set. And then I had to figure out like the story arc, where I want to begin, where I want to end, how to like tie in these jokes into like a cohesive story, because a compliment I've gotten from it is that it sounds conversational. It sounds like just kind of one long story arc, but it's all individual jokes and individual bits that I had to like strategically piece together, which took a lot more time than I expected. But some of those jokes, I just started a new podcast called Comics Talking Comedy with a member of the Hop Breathiverse. And we did an episode where we gave members feedback on their sets. And then they were like, well, why don't, and we had fun roasting and things like that. And then they were like, well, why don't you do your early sets? So we both pulled out sets. I pulled out a set from like 2 years in, and I was hearing even like the early versions of a few of the jokes I did in my special, the kernels of those ideas that then grew into longer form bits. Even like 2 years into my career, those ideas bloomed into a comedy special, 8 years later. And now it's kind of like I have a blank slate. And now it's like I'm starting completely over, and I'm excited about it because part of wanting to do the special was to like stop leaning on this stuff, get it out there. So I have a like more accountability to start writing new and getting away from this chapter of my life and into a new version and new iteration and new like evolution of my stand up. So it's really forced me to step out of my comfort zone. And since quarantine, it's been difficult to find motivation and accountability, which is why like I've been so focused on the Hot Breathiverse and the online community for myself. It's as much for other comics, for myself. I need accountability. I need somewhere to report, to put in the work. And it's exciting, and I'm excited to like see what's next this year as live shows start to open back up, what's going to come of that. But I want to make sure that I have material ready for when I am doing these live shows again. And it's a process. I'm starting from scratch, starting with a few basic ideas I'm trying to cobble together right now. And I'm doing the best I can on the Zoom shows and the feedback mics. But when the live shows come back, I'm excited to really start hitting the ground running and start building that momentum that I know developing a joke takes multiple, in Atlanta, I do multiple shows a night just to hone the craft. So I'm excited to get back in that workflow.
That's awesome. Yeah, my wife already said as soon as clubs open up, I want you out there every night. Like literally, she's like, I'm kicking you out. Like you're not allowed to be home. And I was like, wow. She's like, because I write every day. Like I took the Seinfeld method of never break the chain. I write a joke every single day. Mm-hmm. It may not be a great joke. It may be a one-liner. It may be whatever, but I'm writing something every day. So I'm working that muscle. And that was the biggest thing that I learned is like, if you write every day, you're not going to be, it's not magic, but you're going to be able to come up with an idea and flesh out something a little bit faster than I noticed the difference between I can make a long joke now that's tight with good tags in between compared to when I first started writing jokes and I couldn't write a joke to save my life. I couldn't write like a single one-liner and not be like, that doesn't make sense. Like, what did I just write? I just wrote nothing,
Yeah, and writing is a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And those magic moments where you sit down and write and all of a sudden you have like 5 punchlines. Yeah, that's not by accident. That's because you've been writing every day leading up to that moment. It's not like all of a sudden there's a spark of just magic. You've been putting in the work that build up and culminated into that like magic moment of like 5 punchlines at once. But the more you write, the more chances you're giving yourself to find that next punchline. And it may be like 1 out of 20. Legitimately, 1 out of 20 jokes may be worth keeping. That's the reality.
What do you do with all of the jokes that you write that you don't use on stage? Do you keep them like in a separate file, or do you? And what's your process? Do you write in a Word document? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I have a box of like old notebooks and everything I've written, I feel like I have in a box in my closet over here. But like since quarantine, I like writing by hand, but I've been keeping track of everything in a Google Doc since quarantine. Mainly because like on Zoom shows, I can just have it up and I can kind of scroll through it and keep track of it as I'm going through it. But before that, I would have anything accessible. I still write in these all the time. That's great, Joel. Yeah, your background. I write our daily writing club, the Write 10 Club. I write in that every day. But I would have like the smaller portable notebooks that I would write my set lists in and then review my sets in there. Kind of keep track of it that way. But I can tell you, I do not have an organization system. I would love to figure it out. We've had people in the Facebook group share their process in spreadsheets and things like that. But I hear spreadsheets and my mind just like melts. It just turns to mud. And I'm like, Mama? So I'm not organized at all. But I'm hoping working on this new set, I will find a system because I can't imagine how many jokes I've forgotten or how many jokes or ideas I've lost just because I'm not organized and disciplined in that aspect. I think I could develop a lot faster just being more organized.
Yeah, I think it was Adam, the one that you had that really was dropped recently. He talked about organizing into like family or jobs or whatever it was, and George Carlin did that. He would like do on note cards for each different kind of topic. So he could go to like those old school filing, like the things that they used in the library for Dewey Decimal, and he would pull that out and he would have like note cards for like, this is the family drawer, and this is the jobs, and this is the cars, and this is the whatever. And so when I started writing, I am a comedy nerd. I literally love comedy. I would write, I would just make a Word document on my computer and say family. And then anytime I wrote a family joke, I'd go and put that joke in there. I might write it somewhere else at first, but then I go put it in there. And then I have, whatever it is, the topic is, I do that. So I can go through and find jokes on whatever I want. Now, the problem that I have is the same problem that you have and had building the Trophy Husband is, how do I put these all together to make a cohesive storyline? That's the difficult part. That's the hardest part, because you can just go up and tell a bunch of jokes, but then it just feels odd. It doesn't feel like you're making that connection or you're letting them view into your life. You're just kind of telling them jokes, and that I don't like either. I have seen some comedians where that does work, like your Mitch Hedbergs or or Stephen Wrights, where it's just one-liners and they're just silly jokes, but they still give a little bit of insight, but you're not getting the whole story like you would like a Tom Segura or a Joe Rogan or whatever, or Eddie Murphy or Chris Rock or whatever. Like those things, you're getting insight into their lives. So I understand that. Although my favorite comedian of all time that I will listen to anytime, you're gonna think this is crazy, I love Rodney Dangerfield, like legitimately love Rodney Dangerfield.
The king.
But the thing is, his whole thing is completely 100% made up. None of what he talks about is real. And it's such a weird, like, it almost makes my brain explode when I listen to it, because I'm like, this isn't real, but it feels real. Like, that's the craziest part of the Rodney Dangerfield thing. And
it's so funny.
He's the best. Have you ever performed at Dangerfield's in New York? It's closed now, but
no, I never. No.
I was lucky enough one time to go up there, and somebody that I had met online, Dan Lamort, I don't know if you know who he is.
I've heard the name before, yeah.
He's an amazing comedian from New Jersey. He's fantastic. He invited me to go there. He helped me get on a show and stuff. And I went up there and did a show at Dangerfield's. And man, I don't even care. I wasn't even there for the show. I was there for, I'm in Rodney Dangerfield's club right now. Like, I literally am getting to perform on the same stage that he's performed on, that Andrew Dice Clay's performed on. They're like just people that I've like loved and grown up loving, and are not clean comedians, by the way, or whatever.
Yeah.
But are people that I grew up on, and I like, it was heaven for me. It was like, if I died right now, I'd be okay. Like, I'd be totally happy with that life and being in that situation for that one night. So
yeah, it's a stylistic choice as well. Like, there's no right way in comedy. There's your way is like what I like to say. I probably read that on a fortune cookie or something, but there's like, it's your personal preference. If you want to do quick one-liners, go for it. If you want to do stories, like, go for it. That's what's great about comedy is it's what you want your comedy to be. So that's why you can't really, I never really tell someone that's right or wrong. I'm like, oh, is that what your sense of humor tells you? Great. Go for it. I just personally, my goal is I like to be clean, because my goal is I'll know I've made it. I mean, I feel like I've already made it, but like my big goal is to be doing afternoon shows. I don't want to be out at midnight. I don't want to be out at midnight performing for drunk people. I want to do afternoon shows. I want to do a 2:00 and a 4 p.m. show where there's grandkids to grandparents there.
And then are you eating at 5? Are you eating at 5?
yeah. Well, we got to get the blue plate special. We're getting the early bird special. So
that's at the Waffle House.
Yes, of course. That's like become like my big comedy goal is like, I know I've hit a new level when I can sell out venues on afternoon shows, like that would become cool. My goal. And that's being clean is a big, I mean, it's just the law of numbers. I'm not saying being clean is better. Dude, if you want to be dirty, I don't care. As long if it's fun, it's gotta be funny. Kids, it's gotta be funny. I don't care what you say, but it's gotta be funny. You could be dirty, weird, absurd, awkward, ironic. It's gotta be funny. It's gotta be funny. So it's got to be funny. I can't say that enough. It's got to be funny first. Whatever you do, it's got to be funny first. So I don't care what style, what voice you want to have in this game. It's just got to be funny. And I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
Love it.
But the thing about being a clean comic, just by the numbers, there's more work. I've gotten booked on random birthday parties and corporate potlucks and just random stuff where they just want some fun, relieving entertainment. I've booked some Zoom shows, even like all paid work, because I can be funny and clean, and they can bring their families. And there's just, they don't have to think twice about it. They don't have to be like, well, could you not do this or that? They know it's just going to be an easy show that's going to be funny, and it's going to serve the purpose of providing the service, the job of comedy. So just by law of numbers, the cleaner you are, the more people that you can entertain, the more work you can get. That's just it. But also, look at Tom Segura, look at Mark Norman. But even Mark Norman said, actually, we did a Q&A with him recently where he was talking about like opening up for Seinfeld and how he had to scrape everything he's ever written to get that 20 minutes of clean material. And his advice to young comics was be clean, because there's more work doing it. I've heard Chris Rock say the same thing as well. Not on hot breath yet.
Get him.
Yet. But it's even dirty comics are like, being clean gets you more work, period.
I love it. So where can people find you, Joel? Where can people find Hot Breath? Let's plug everything, because I want more people to join the Hot Breathiverse and get this love going.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you guys love comedy, which you clearly are watching this, so you do, the Hot Breathiverse, it's actually Hot Breath podcast, but we're on YouTube, where I post daily tips on there from my interviews and my own Q&As I do. We have the podcast available wherever you listen to podcasts. And our Facebook group is where we do the daily writing clubs. We do the feedback mics. We just started something called a stage fright mic, where people that are afraid to perform, like even on Zoom, like we've seen people who have never done comedy, afraid to even speak into like a camera, work themselves into actually like doing Zoom shows now. And like, because even comics, I remember the early days where I would just go to an open mic and watch and be like, oh, one day I'll do that. So even the step of like getting on a Zoom mic is scary for people. So we actually have a stage fright mic now to help people overcome those fears and start just creating comedy and pursuing comedy like they want to. So if you just go on Facebook, you just search Hot Breath or Comedy Writing Room, you'll see a link to that. And on our Patreon, we do a monthly joke writing contest where the winner gets $100 and an interview on the podcast as well, which you were referencing, James, Adam Mueller, who has won twice now.
Yeah.
And last month's winner, Matt Menard. It was so interesting interviewing them because you're talking about Adam's system for writing. Matt had a similar system of organization and how he analyzes comedy. And what I'm picking up on, the trend of these people winning the $100 every month are the ones who are meticulous and are strategic and are organized around what they do, that are willing to put in the work, And even since, I think this started maybe in November, we actually launched a community called Hot Breath Pro, which is our comedian incubator, which is a membership community. But I've been teaching for like 5 years and I have these online courses. I just put them all into this incubator and gave comedians really a supportive community to get access to the tools they need to develop as a comic. But more importantly, the network and the access to other motivated comics. Because I can tell you from personal experience, you are the result of the comedians around you. Yep. If you're out at bars getting drunk with other comics, you're going to become them. If you're out at bars just working on your craft and then going home and reworking them or writing with other comics that want to just develop, you're going to become that. So you're a reflection of your community. So we developed Hot Breath Pro for comics who really aspire to be professionals. We wanted to give them the tools and the community to do that.
And where can people find that at?
JoelByardsComedy.com. You can find everything you want. JoelByardsComedy.com/HotBreathPro if you want a direct link to that. But any questions? I mean, James, you know this, and you're like this also. And Luke, are you still awake, Luke? Are you still there?
Oh, yeah.
After the dab, I didn't know if you knocked yourself out dabbing too hard. But yeah, I mean, reach out to me, honestly, like on social media, wherever, at Joel Byars Comedy. I mean, just reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions. You know, I'm a comic that loves helping other comics. So whatever I can do to help, you know, I'm here.
That is the best. Luke, where can everybody find you at, buddy?
You can find me at Cold Breath Canadian all over the internet. And
You know what? That's your stand-up special now. That's what it's going to be called. That's what you're doing. Cold Breath Canadian. That's going to be a special account.
Are you in Canada, Luke?
From Canada originally. But
Oh, okay.
Our buddy David Studebaker says he's either the nicest American or meanest Canadian. So we don't know which one he is yet.
I think that would be my title of the special.
What?
Nicest American, meanest Canadian, something like that.
I love
think.
that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I always thought you were going to call it sorry, like, but with the, like, you know how Canadians say, like, sorry. Like, I thought you were going to just call it that.
Sorry.
something poutine.
Something poutine related.
Yeah.
Something poutine.
Poutinini. Poutinani.
Putin. Poutine. Putin. The Putin of poutine.
That's like Russian poutine, right? Russian poutine. Well, Joel, thank you so much for being on. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Please check out Joel. Please check out Hot Breath. You will not regret it. If you love this podcast, you'll love his podcast. I have stolen so much from Joel. And I'm admitting it right here. I don't care. I love the guy. He's amazing. So the thing, my one goal though that I haven't got to do is I actually want to meet Joel in person. We've had conversations and we've been on a thing together, but I've never met him. So hopefully I'll get to go to Atlanta sometime and hang out with him and really like just, you know, learn from him in person. That would be great as well.
Oh, we're making that happen for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Whenever the world opens up, we'll definitely make that happen.
Well, I have a good friend out there, Jenna Kim Jones. I don't know if you met her, but she's a comedian who moved out there. She lives in Peachtree City. I think that's what it is. The one where you could drive golf carts on.
Yeah.
That's where she lives. And
Very nice.
Yeah, she's cool. So thank you guys so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and thank you again, Joel. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.